So, I've been thinking about the term alpha male of late and the way it's really evolved, the way it's been used and misused, the way the definition has sort of evolved, the way the whole movement behind what an alpha male is has it's never really been the same thing. Ever since it became like a commonplace term, it hasn't been the same over the past, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 years. And to kind of think about it, like when I got into the whole, oh, I want to be an alpha male type of life and everything, like it had a very different definition to what it is today. And I'm not gonna lie, this whole thought process was sparked after a guy pretty much called another guy, get this, a blue pilled beta male simp. Like when it's getting to a point where someone's being called like 5 words as one insult, if you can kind of look at it as an insult, then it does seem particularly interesting because the whole term beta male didn't exist without the term alpha male. Like the term beta male came after the alpha male as a result of the alpha male. And it was in regards to some relationship topic, some men versus women topic that was being discussed at the time. And when I kind of look at where the alpha male is right now, at least in terms of the mainstream common outlook of what an alpha male is, I can understand why it's a point of ridicule. Like, guys nowadays don't want to be looked at or be referred to as alpha males because of what it's become. And to think about how it's actually evolved, like when I was trying to become an alpha male, when I was getting into the whole, oh, I want to be an alpha male kind of lifestyle, like it was something to be endeared. It was something that guys who knew about it wanted to be a part of it. Like it was a part of this whole idea and this way of living that would make guys better, more desirable, and much more top tier. And at its core, even though it was an online sort of silent movement, it was filled with guys that were all about trying to better themselves. But today, you kind of listen to people that call themselves alpha males, people who claim to be alpha males, especially when they use that term so much, like it's just become so cringe. And the interesting part about it was I didn't notice how cringe it had sort of become up until I was with a couple of babes who were asking me about it. Now, this happened a couple of months ago. I had met up with a homie of mine called Josh. We weren't really close at the time. So we had just met up, we're sort of chilling for a bit, and the guy was supposed to go for a plan later on with a couple of his female friends, and the guy just tells me, yo, just come through. I've already told them you're coming, so you might as well just come and let's have some fun. So I was like, sure, why the hell not? It was my first time meeting them, and I was telling them about what I do. And I was telling them about the fact that I do this TV show called Men's Conference. And the tagline of Men's Conference is, where men come to become alphas. And I started being questioned on the whole idea of what an alpha male is. And when I was asked that question the first time, I was like, it depends on who's saying it at the time. And the thing is, different people have sort of defined it in different ways. And I started getting a little bit uncomfortable because I knew that the public perception of the alpha male had already started sort of being tarnished and being looked at with a certain level of ridicule and not as much seriousness. So either way, they continued to ask me questions about it, and I sort of tried to answer it the best as I could, but I'd noticed that in some cases I'd feel like I was a little bit wrong, then I'd walk back on some things and I tried to redefine a few things here and there, and I realized that the idea of the alpha male had sort of gotten so lost in the wind that even I wasn't able to properly define it, or at least in terms of how a lot of people nowadays look at the idea of the alpha male, it was a little bit hard for me to define. And that kind of brought up the whole thing, which was that men have sort of lost the idea of what an alpha male is. Because essentially, the idea of being the alpha male was supposed to be this dominant character or this dominant animal or this dominant person that was at the top of the pyramid that had this dominant control and was able to lead and so on and so forth. And the actual origin of the term alpha male was actually a book called The Wolf, Ecology and Behavior of an Endangered Species. It was a book that was written in 1970 by a man known as David Mech, or David Mech, whichever way you'd like to pronounce it. Now, the whole idea of it came out in that book, and it started being used selectively to show like powerful CEOs in the 90s in the US before it was actually popularized by a man known as Neil Strauss when he wrote the book The Game. And that was around 2005. Which is why if you actually go and look at rom-coms that are based off of picking women, such as H, such as Crazy Stupid Love, they all started from 2005 going onwards. And that was something that was sort of the talk of what an alpha male was supposed to be for quite a lot of guys, because your ability to pick up babes was a thing that a lot of guys were sort of looking for, and they knew that the guy that could pick up the most babes was the guy that would be the most respected. Because even though you flaunt that you have the most money, if you're amongst a group of friends that earns roughly about the same, you're pretty much in a level playing field. So you might as well be able to get the one thing that doesn't actually require you to get a degree or to do some sort of, factualized calculation to kind of get. And that was the babes. And that's kind of where the whole alpha male thing sort of came up. Now, I hopped onto the whole alpha male train on picking up babes around 2014, 2015. And during that time, I sort of found it while it was still in the whole pickup artistry stage, but it had also grown into the whole self-improvement side of it. The whole workout, dress well, and learn how to talk to people nicely, learn how to talk to babes like this, treat them nicely and shit. That was sort of where I got into the whole alpha male kind of lifestyle. And that was probably what I'd call the better side of it, because at that point in time, there was a full total overhaul approach to the whole alpha male lifestyle, where it's you learn to make yourself better as a guy as well as you learn how to talk to women. And that was a really, really good point in time, because it was all positive. We were all just interested in picking up babes and being the best version of ourselves and shit. And that was a really good point in time. Except that at about 2013, there was a book that was published by a man known as Rollo Tomasi, which was known as The Rational Male. And that book is actually way more significant right now in today's day and age than it was during the time of its publishing, because over the years, more and more men sort of got to know about it, and it essentially brought up the whole idea of the red pill and the blue pill, which was a concept that was derived from the Matrix. And it was talking about, social gender dynamics and how, guys are supposed to behave a certain way and babes are supposed to behave a certain way, and you should drop a certain babe if she doesn't behave a certain way or if she behaves a certain way. And that's sort of what's brought in this new current wave of alpha male mentality, and has given rise to terms like the red pill movement and the black pill movement, which is mostly made up of the incels, the involuntary celibates that supposedly sound like they're so pissed off with the world and with women as a whole. Now, the red pill movement plus the rise in people talking about gender dynamics that they don't totally understand, because I would actually want to point that one out, they barely understand shit, is what's pretty much led to a lot of the men versus women debates that are existing nowadays, more so from the men's side. The babes have always brought up some sort of men versus women debate over the past couple of years, but guys have been coming out with some very interesting opinions, and guys have been talking a lot of shit about babes of late. And it's one of those things that's been caused by this whole red pill movement, and more so everyone trying to show that they know something about the current society that they're in. I don't know. Maybe it's the fact that podcast equipment became a lot more accessible, or people realize that it's actually not that hard to start a podcast, but people have been bringing up that shit. And that's why you hear stuff like, oh, you shouldn't date such and such a babe. Oh, after babe has hit 30, she's hit the wall, so you shouldn't be attracted to her or some shit. And to be honest, that shit has really, really messed up a lot of guys. It's actually messed up quite a lot of dudes, because when you look at some of the things that those guys will say, it's not that it's come from experience. It's not that they've actually looked into the research themselves. It's probably one or two articles that they've read, and probably something that they heard their fellow content creator, their favorite YouTuber saying, that they just felt resonated with them, or sort of justified a thought process that they had. And at the end of the day, you just have a bunch of people with buzzwords and secondhand opinions, which may be based on facts or some form of statistical information, but for the most part, guys haven't really experienced shit to really give a good conclusive outlook on whatever it is that they're saying. So you hear a lot of people are just repeating the same exact things they've heard other people saying, and they can't properly back that up. And it's something that a friend of mine actually pointed out when she was listening to one of the minisodes when I had a certain guest of mine, and hint, it was a part 2, and the guy just sounded like he was bashing women, and he pretty much was trying to give reasons as to why women ain't shit. And that was a bit wild for me, because a lot of the stuff that he was saying, a lot of the stuff that a lot of these guys will mention, are stuff that I'll probably talk about from a general topic point of view, but some of the ideas, some of the outlooks and opinions that they have are a little bit more extreme and are so harsh that it actually forces you to wonder whether these guys have actually lived any life at all. And to think about the fact that, yes, if you were to think of the alpha male back in the day, they'd choose the babe that they'd want and they'd go for them. And there was this sort of selective preference on what they'd want versus what they'd go for. Like, nowadays, there's some sort of collective prejudice that has sort of come in amongst a bunch of guys that are all about this life. And it's not like they're really trying to promote anything. They just talk about how babes aren't the kind of babes that they were back in the day. Oh, you shouldn't be dating these babes. These babes are a problem. That babe is a problem. And you're like, do you really think that back in the day when guys were trying to pick up babes, they were really thinking that far? Like, when did we move as so-called alpha males from selective preference to collective prejudice? Like, shouldn't we be asking ourselves if we've actually lost our way as quote-unquote alpha men? And to kind of conclude this, it is pretty sad. It is pretty sad that it's gone from this place where people are trying to help each other improve to this point in time where dudes are just sort of just talking absolute shit about babes. And right now it's just talk, and there's not that much doing or self-improving that's coming along with it. Although, then again, I might be wrong about that shit, so I want your thoughts on this. At Breaktime on Westside on Facebook or on IG, at BagakaTheD on Twitter. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.